Hello, you're listening to the Saluki Gamescast. This is episode 104 for Tuesday, February 18th, 2025. My name is Justin Young. Joining me as always is Alicia Utecht. Alicia, how are you?
I am hanging in there. February is exhausting, but we're halfway done. We're making it through.
How many shows do y'all have
3
this month? Oh.
We had a full 3-night show, and then we have a 2-night show this week, and we have a 1-night show next week. So
That's Jordan's show next week.
So as technical director,
Yeah,
even for the 2 nights and the 1-night show, I'm still in there every night.
right.
And when is Sean's show? Isn't that like...
Sean's show is the end of March, so that's after spring break. March we get to go back to our normal, like, one show. I can breathe. I can have a life. This month, I'm just dead.
Well, since we're talking about Kleinau stuff, we'll obviously, like Christina and Mario are here as well. We should note that all 3 of you were in a show a week ago called Epiphanies. And congratulations on that.
Thank you.
It was a lot of fun.
It was interesting just because the cast was so big. Usually Kleinau shows are, like 1 or 4 people, and this one actually had a much larger cast and everything. So it seemed like one of those things where probably was a little unusual running the show, like trying to juggle all the people and everything coming on.
We had
and off
no
stage.
full cast rehearsals until like
The week of.
yeah, because
Yeah.
even the days that we typically would, like Saturday tech load in,
And technically, I think it was because we were missing somebody that Monday. I think it was like 2 days before.
Yeah.
But, I mean, luckily, folks were... The most confusing part, at least from what I saw, was deciding who would move things on and off the stage. Mario did a good job of like, okay, we're going to map this out.
Yeah.
It was like a puzzle game.
Exactly. Mario solved it. He was MVP.
Well, I don't know about solved it, but I tried to give us as much of a direction as possible.
Yeah.
Which was much appreciated.
Yeah.
Because I did not have the spoons to direct my 390 student. I was very thankful that you were like, come here, we're gonna walk through this.
Yeah.
While I was dealing with other stuff.
But I thought it went really well, for having that many different people, and like something like that can become very sort of jumbled and disparate, right? And it ended up not feeling that way. So
Cool.
So congratulations to all
Thank
3 of you.
Thank you.
I know Mario, especially like you, it's not something you do a whole lot of. So that was cool to see you doing that.
Yeah, thanks.
That was your first show ever, right?
Of the full ones. I mean, I did the
spotlight
hour in the
yeah.
fall, but yeah.
All right. So Christina, how's it going for you?
Pretty good. Pretty much like Alicia, because I had the bright idea to do 2 shows at once. So luckily that one's done, but I still have Vagina Monologues next
This
Saturday.
Saturday.
Is it this
This
Saturday?
weekend.
It's
isn't
this
it?
Saturday because it's the same night as Africana Theater Lab.
So that should tell you how well I'm doing. Plus, plus joining the new queer choir that started. So I'm pretty tired, but fulfilled, I guess.
Well, that's the hope, right?
Yeah.
You're doing all this work. Hopefully you're getting something out of it, not just completely giving, but actually receiving something as well.
Yeah, it's the choir especially has been a lot of fun because I was never a singer. Like I was told I was tone deaf in like high school and stuff.
Rude.
I know, right?
Are you sure they weren't saying you were like most deaf?
Dude, that would be badass.
Yeah.
But no, sadly. And then I took voice lessons during the pandemic over Zoom. And she was like, honey, you're not tone deaf. And I was like, oh, so this is actually my first time to be in something like this. I mean, I was in band in high school, but that didn't count.
As a choir kid and as someone whose best friend was a band and choir kid, they're very different.
Yes, they really are. I was like, I read this music, but if you ask me to sing an A, I don't know what that is. So, yeah.
All right, cool. Mario, how are you?
I'm doing good. I'm not nearly as busy as the other two are. I had the show And I was thankful the show ended because then I had my evenings back.
Right.
And I'm just kind of chilling. I've got one class this semester, and I'm teaching something I already taught before. So
Nice.
pretty easy semester schedule so far.
It's always easiest when you're reteaching something. Like that first semester, it doesn't matter what you're teaching. Like you're just building the course as you go to like a large degree.
Yeah, last semester was very much, sometimes the day before, like, okay, I got to put together the rest of this
Right.
PowerPoint and make sure I know what I'm talking about. And now at least it's a very quick skim. But we're like, okay, I know what I'm doing here. So that's been really nice.
Cool. All right.
How are you, Justin? We haven't asked you in a while.
Like since last episode?
And that was 2 weeks ago.
I'm doing fine. Nothing too exciting going on. Went to Saluki Con this weekend, which I think all of you were at except Christina.
I didn't go.
So I got to meet. Alicia's pulling out her Pokemon that she.
I got an emotional support Togepi.
Yeah.
So Togepi is the little. He's like half an egg, like sticking out.
Yeah, if you watched the anime, Togepi is the one Misty was always carrying around.
Yeah.
So yeah, went to that and like got to hear Sean Astin speak, and so he was really
so good.
entertaining.
He was so good.
And got to meet E.G. Daily, who is I'm a huge fan of, and like I realized like nobody else who's not like exactly in my demographic is, and it was like very clear really quick. It was like, oh yeah, like if you grew up in the 1980s and like particularly liked these type of movies, you very much like were an E.G. Daily fan. But like she was really interesting to hear, because one of the things that she does is voice acting for cartoons. She's very known for things like Rugrats and Powerpuff Girls. So she talked about that, but she also talked about doing voices for video games. So like she did, like just offhand, I know she did for like the Doom Eternal, the latest Doom game. And did a voice for that, and has done it for lots of other video games. Mario, I did not get to ask her about had she played all the Powerpuff Girl games or Rugrat video games.
There are only 2 of them. And there's only one Powerpuff Girls game on the N64, Justin. It's not like it. You're asking her if she played like 30 games.
Okay, in fairness, yes, on the N64, but I'm sure on the PlayStation there's.
Oh, I'm sure there's but I don't care about the PlayStation.
So I did not get to ask her about that, but she did talk about video games, doing voice work for video games, and it was interesting to hear her talk about that versus an animated movie or television series, because she noted that it was a lot of re-recording the same lines over again with slight variations. And she said a lot more screaming in video games, which I assume is because characters die in video games. So you have to record multiple different takes of your character dying. So that was really interesting. For those who don't know, E.G. Daily is probably most famous, like her image at least is from Pee-wee's Big Adventure. She played Dottie, Pee-wee's girlfriend in that film, and then she does the big theme song from Better Off Dead, so she's playing at the big school dance in that, so she's in that scene, and then she had a couple of kind of like pop hits, and then went on and did the voice of Tommy, not Chucky, in Rugrats, and then did Buttercup.
She was Buttercup in Powerpuff Girls.
Yeah. So
Chucky was that other woman that did like Bart, and
yes,
yeah, she spoke for one of the forensics competitions I did back in the day.
Nancy Cartwright.
Yeah.
yeah, who is Sabrina Carpenter's aunt.
Really?
Fun.
I did not realize that.
Sabrina Carpenter is a Nepo baby.
Oh, honestly, it makes sense. I mean, I love her, but
It really makes sense when you realize, like, she started as like a child actress,
Yes.
and
Yeah.
you go, oh yeah, how do you get into that? It's a lot easier if you know people in the industry. That's to take nothing away from her. They're
No.
very talented people who are Nepo babies, but it is not at all shocking when you find out that they are.
Exactly.
So anyways, it was cool. Saluki Con is like a neat little event and everything. So it's always cool to see them do stuff like that. Not a whole lot of video game representation at it, but they do a little stuff with a Smash Brothers tournament and that kind of stuff.
Oh, cool.
All right. Well, we have a lot of news to get to, so let's go ahead and jump into what you've been playing. Alicia, what have you been playing lately?
So like I said, it's kind of a crazy month, so I honestly haven't even turned on my Switch, but I am still every day playing Pokemon TCG Pocket. I think I want to say the last episode that we recorded, they hadn't yet released, or they had just released the Dialga and Palkia sets. So those are fantastic. I finally got Dialga EX, so I can use him finally. But yeah, so that's really been it. I don't have too much new to say about that. They did introduce trading now, but it's very controlled, in that like you can only if you trade a 1-star card, you can only trade it for other 1-star cards. And there's no real way at this point to communicate like, hey, I'm looking for this card. You just kind of have to send out a trade and hope that you get one that you want.
So you're wonder trading.
You're not wonder trading because you can reject it if you don't want the card that the other person offers. But it's very much like you just kind of put it out into the ether to one particular person and hope that they'll respond with something you want. And if they don't, you just reject it and try again later. So I do.
Sounds like a very Nintendo way of handling that.
Yeah. I do hope that they eventually implement something to say, like, I want this card. And, like, trade me, I will trade this card for whatever. But we'll see. I know that they're working on, because they've got a lot of complaints about the trading system. And so I know that they're, they've made statements about like being aware of this, and they're working on making adjustments and doing things like that. So I hope that that's one of the adjustments that they make, but I can't say I'm expecting it.
Yeah. All right. Christina, what have you been playing?
So I have a couple ones to talk about. One is on Valentine's. My partner lives in Denver, so we couldn't have like a date. But she was like, do you want to play DBD? So that's what I did.
So really a Christina date.
No, she loves it too.
But I just mean like a date. No, you had a you date,
yes,
which is much better than just like
yeah. I was about to say, she watches more of it than I do. She was the one that she was like, they're doing 2v8 Resident Evil right now, and I want to play. And I was like, okay. But yeah, So the 2v8, which I've talked about before, the new one that they have going on right now is specifically Resident Evil themed, which means that all of the Resident Evil characters they have, which is quite a few, they have 2 killers, they have the Nemesis and Wesker, and then they have, I think, 3 of the survivors and like multiple skins and stuff.
I had like Claire, I thought I saw.
Yeah, they have Ada, they have Jill, they have the one from 4. Leon, yeah.
Ashley,
yes.
One of the 2.
Leon. So you can play, like it had a thing where you could, during this event, you could play those characters without paying for them, which I thought was really cool and smart, because like if folks played them and then liked them, they would then purchase them, right?
Yep.
But it also had a couple of things, like obviously the Raccoon City map was one that was on a lot. It had a thing where they had little herbs around, the different colored ones from the game, and like the green ones could heal you, the yellow ones would take away a hook state. So if you interacted with those, it was really cool. And we did really well, considering I haven't played DBD in a little bit.
Dead by Daylight.
Dead by Daylight. Sorry, the full name I forgot. And then I've been watching one that's real interesting. That's an older game, but the third one is about to come out. I had never seen or played the game Kindergarten, and which is like you play as a little kindergartner, and it's like a puzzle game where each person you can talk to in your class does something different, and there's like a bunch of goals or missions rather that you have. Like you talk to this person, and this guy's Monty. He's the one that sells everything. You can buy a pack of cigarettes and give it to this kid who smokes as a kindergartner, right? And it just there's a lot of different fun stuff that you can do.
It doesn't feel like much worse than a kindergartner selling cigarettes.
I mean, that's fair. Yeah. I don't know.
I was like, isn't there murder too?
There's lots of murder. There's so much murder. There's also, there's a murderous janitor. And then and he calls your primary teacher.
Is his name Fred Krueger?
No, it is not. I forget what it is. I just call him janitor. I don't know. But he refers to your teacher as Mrs. Jiggly Tits. So it's like, and the second one was like even better, I thought. And the third one apparently is coming out soon. So
I have never heard of this series.
It's honestly, I was nervous at first, but honestly it was kind of reminiscent of like there was a certain time period where on CartoonNetwork.com they would have like these awful little like puzzle games, not awful,
little flash games.
Yeah, that's what it looks like, honestly.
Yeah.
Okay.
And kind of how it performs is just a bit more complicated.
I would say I've seen them in my recommended from one of my one of my favorite YouTubers, Easy Speezy, has done a speed run of both 1 and 2, and I haven't watched it because it just hasn't occurred to me. But
so is this something that grew out of like Newgrounds or something? Or Congregate? Like it sounds like a game that would have grown out of one of those websites.
Maybe. I don't know a lot about the history of it. I just know that it's an older game.
Okay.
Or one that's not new.
I was gonna say, I don't know if it's older. It's
I want to
like
say 2017, maybe.
Yeah.
I think 2010s for sure.
Yeah.
But I don't know if it's early or late 2010s.
But in the first game, you collect like Monstermon cards, which are like Pokemon cards, and you don't do anything with them. You just try to collect them. And then in the second game, you collect them, and then there are missions where you play people with the cards. So whichever ones you have, like that's your deck, and the more you get, the more you can like change out your deck and stuff like that. But yeah, the little kindergarten characters are really interesting, and some of them are really adorable, and you feel bad when you have to put gum in her hair, but you have to put gum in her hair to get to the next part of the mission. Like it's interesting.
Okay. That sounds like a really interesting game. And it very much sounds like from that era of like Congregate and Newgrounds and stuff, like the like sort of slightly edgy, but maybe not too edgy.
I mean, there are parts of it that are pretty edgy, but
Okay.
Yeah.
Mario, how about you?
I finished Final Fantasy VII on Sunday. Yeah, that's really it. It's a good video game. It's understandable why it's so highly regarded in games history.
That's quite the ringing endorsement.
I don't know what else to say.
Yeah, that's a video game.
I mean, it's very good. It's got it. I mean, I tend to get a little burnt out on JRPGs and turn-based games by the end. And so by the end, I was just like, all right. And I think I was just like so overpowered by the end.
Yep.
Yuffie is so broken in that game.
Yeah.
Yeah, she is.
Like her ultimate weapon is just like, I think I beat Genova before she even got to attack me. And I think Sephiroth in like 3 or 4 turns. So
You didn't have to sit through the 3-minute cutscene for Sephiroth's.
Oh, okay. I did
Meteor?
have to sit through that, and then Yuffie killed him on the counterattack. So it's
I love that.
Yeah, it was just I had. Yeah. So, anyways, like I said, it's a very good game. I think I'm really glad to have played it. The previous times I had tried to play it, I had never gotten out of Midgar, and so to get to like really go and experience the full world was really great. I mean, it's a fantastic, if not a little convoluted story, but
it's very complicated.
Just a little.
It's a shocker that this guy also created Kingdom Hearts, right?
Yeah.
He's like, what if I went even more convoluted
with Disney?
But yeah, I mean, it's really good. There's so many little weird things that game does as well, in terms of like the real-time strategy section at Fort Condor and the snowboarding and all of, like I said, there's so many little weird things that it does that you don't get to experience in the first part of the game. And so, I mean, it's great. I'm glad to have played it. I played it because I think I had mentioned I picked up the whatever they're called, remake and rebirth combo pack. I had it for the PS4, but I bought the combo pack for PC, and so I'll play those at some point. I'll probably play other stuff before I commit to another 40-hour game. But I mean, it was really great.
Yeah, that's one of those games that I'm always kind of intrigued about people playing today, like the original version, not the remake and stuff, because that game was so much of its time, right? Like that game was like a flashpoint in sort of the history of video games, right? Like video games before and after that really shifted, and that game, along with Metal Gear Solid, really showed that, okay, you can make video games super cinematic and sometimes to a negative extent, the lessons people have taken. And it's kind of interesting to think about, like, okay, what if you go back and play that fresh today, like what sort of impact does that have?
I will say, I think the thing that was surprising is that combat system is really simple.
Yeah.
JRPG combat can also get like really, you can like really get in the weeds with all the different things that you can do. And it's pretty, that one is really simple. You know, everybody talks about like, oh, Pokemon is this like really simple, it's rock, paper, scissors. I think that game is more simple than Pokemon is when it comes to its combat system, especially with like how many types of, and all the type effectivenesses in Pokemon and stuff like that.
Modern Pokemon games.
Yeah, I think, you know, Generation 1 is maybe simple enough. And I think the concept of it, people understand rock, paper, scissors. But I think that I think this one might be even more simple because it really is just like press the attack button.
Right.
Yeah.
Once you get strong enough. There's very, I mean, again, maybe it was just because of how strong a couple of my characters were, but it really was just like, I'm just pressing the attack button. I'm not thinking about anything else. I might cast regen like once at the beginning of battle, and then
No, I think that's true of most Japanese role-playing games of that generation. I mean, of that era. Like even going back to the 16-bit, most of those games are very like, the combat is sort of turn your brain off and check out until like maybe some bosses. Some bosses you might have to think about, but the general combat is sort of, you know, mindless. That's one of the reasons I think something like Super Mario RPG is remembered so fondly today, is because that game actually said, well, let's make it more active, right? Let's make you more of a participant in the battle system and everything.
Well, and I think the other thing is, I mean, I'm sure there are in Final Fantasy VII as well, but like Mario RPG has like, each character has like a very specific role that they're playing as well. Whereas, I mean, yeah, should you use like Aerith as your healer? Probably, because that's just like her stats are put that way. But you don't necessarily need to.
Right.
I would say, I think that's one of my favorite things about FF7 is like, even though, you know, there's a clear archetype that the characters can fall into, that doesn't mean the other characters can't play that role.
Yeah.
I think that's a shift from previous Final Fantasies. Like, I mean, particularly if you go back and you play Final Fantasy 1.
Sure, where they've got the very specific jobs and
Right.
stuff like that, yeah. And I think that's particularly the case in contemporary RPGs, where it's like, this is very clearly, this is your support character, and they're casting all of the support spells. and this is your tank that's just going to like, you're putting whatever rampage or whatever, so they're taking all the attacks. And so there's it's from like checkers to chess in a lot of, I mean, a lot of them, once you understand that contemporary system, it's still very easy where you're just like, you just buff up your characters and they kind of become impervious. But yeah, I was surprised by how simple it ended up being by the end of the game. I kept thinking, I was like, oh, this is going to get like more complicated later on. And in many ways, it got even more simple later on because, again, of how strong you get.
Yeah.
But overall, really great time. If you've got the time to commit to, I think it took me like 30 hours. I did some side stuff, but if you get the time to commit to it, I think it's still a worthwhile experience. But I could also understand where if you don't play older games, it might be harder to go back to. You know, playing as many older games as I do, maybe that was an easier barrier to get over.
Well, I was going to say on the like coming to it for the first time in, you know, the past 5 years, there's a really great podcast, and they do podcast and they do a video version where they show the gameplay. It's called No One Can Know About This. And it's two friends, and they're playing every Final Fantasy game. And one of them has played all of them, and the other one has never played some of them. So, like, this man didn't know that Aerith died.
Spoiler.
I was going to say, what?
He got spoiled for it. Literally, they were having lunch with another friend before recording the first episode. And they're like, oh, yeah, we're going to do Final Fantasy VII. And that other friend was like, oh, yeah, that's the one where Aerith dies, isn't it? He was like, what?
As opposed to all those other Aerith games.
Yeah. But that's a really fascinating one to come back and see. Again, that very similar of like, okay, you've got somebody who played this when it first came out and like has all that nostalgia for it, and then you have someone who's never played it before and is experiencing it for the first time. You know, I think they did these episodes in 2018 or something like that, so it's been a little bit of time, but not a massive amount of time ago.
Yeah, I don't know if there were any like major story beats that I was unfamiliar with. I will say, I think maybe I did realize how many characters there were, like playable, like party team characters there were. But I think I didn't, because they were kind of like, oh, I didn't know that this person was even part of this, you know, the main ones you know about, but,
Yeah.
you know. And I mean, I know there's a Sid in basically every game, but, you know, him joining your party and then Vincent being, you know, there as well. And so I was like, oh, there's a lot happening here.
I forget, can you miss Vincent?
Yes.
Vincent and Yuffie are optional.
Okay, that's what I thought. Because I know, like, you know, like Final Fantasy VI has several characters you can miss out on.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't get Vincent early. I got him at the end of the game where I was like, all right, I guess I'll just pick you up and you can be part of the squad for the very end. And I would be willing to bet that because he and Yuffie are optional, that's why they're in like none of the cutscenes.
Yeah.
At least the end game cutscenes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, you only have 3 CDs to work with. You don't have unlimited space.
I can't believe like how much of that game, like those CDs do not feel very balanced in terms of
they're
like
so
what's
not.
on those. Like I'm like 15 hours in and like, congratulations on finishing CD 1 is the achievement. Like that's all the CD 1. Like what the hell is, and I think like CD 3 is just like
It's
the final fight basically.
Yeah, CD3 is literally like
the
okay,
the
do some
Northern Cave,
some
and that's
overworld stuff and then head to the Northern Cave.
Yeah, I mean, I imagine at that point they have to include all of the like potential side content.
Yeah.
That it's like, you know, CD1 doesn't have to put any of that because like, oh, that's not available or it's not accessible to you at this point. Whereas on CD3, it's like, oh, you never did this thing that you could have done
Yeah, you didn't go get
at the beginning of the game. Well, okay, here, you can do it now, I guess.
Is it Emerald Weapon that's under the ocean, or is that Ruby? I don't remember.
Emerald is under the ocean.
Yeah, it's like, okay, you didn't do that yet, go do that now.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's also kind of interesting from a design perspective because you're having to gate stuff CD by CD, right? So there's things that you're putting on CD2 that can only be accessed at that point in the game. And by the time you get to CD3, you cannot access that content, right?
Yeah, there's a number of like unrevisitable areas.
Right.
I'd be interested to see like an old speed run of that game, considering like there's so much of it that's gated. You're not able to just like, I mean, I'm sure it's an old game, so of course it's broken, but.
But it's even been in like the last 3 years that people figured out the choral skip to skip like when you get out of Midgar and you get the whole backstory of like it's only been in the last 3 years that people finally figured out how to skip that. So
yeah, like I said, I think it would be interesting. With how like specifically gated some of that would be, how people have like overcome that. Or it's just a 12-hour speed run, which is how it is sometimes.
I feel like they hide that well in that game. Like I think you can see the seams if you're looking for them.
Yeah.
But like playing through it the first time, they hide those seams very well for it. All right. Is that it?
Yeah.
Okay. I played a couple of demos of games. So I'll start with Schrodinger's Cat Burglar.
That sounds amazing.
Yeah, it's a great name. So this is a game where you play as a cat who's a burglar, and you are
supposedly
you are breaking. Yeah, we don't know. You break into this high-tech lab, and it's you're sort of viewing it from a side perspective, but at a sort of 3/4 overhead view. So almost everything looks like you're kind of looking into a television and seeing the game play out. And you control a little cat, and you play like a cat, except you can go up and hit things. You can knock things off of tables and everything. You can hit switches. And the big caveat of the game is pretty early on, you get into this high-tech machine that splits you into 2 different cats, and you are then controlling each cat with a different control stick. So the left control stick controls one cat, the right control stick controls the other, and so then it becomes a series of puzzle that you're trying to solve. So it's almost it's almost like a what am I thinking, Portal. Because you're going through a lab solving puzzles room by room, and you're using this gameplay mechanic of the 2 separate cats and everything. And I think it's actually it's quite a bit of fun for like a little puzzle game.
I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
Did you play that Brothers game? Brothers, A Tale of Two Sons?
Yeah.
Sort of control like that then?
Yeah. I think that's a good comparison. I wasn't even thinking about that, but yeah, that's probably a pretty good comparison to make.
My favorite picture of it on Google is the one where the cat has its face through a piece of bread.
Yeah, so it obviously is playing a lot with the idea that you have a cat, right? And so it's doing cat-like stuff. You walk across a desk, and as you walk across it, you're just knocking stuff off. Like one of the early things that you do, you're walking across, catwalks up in the ceiling, and you are intentionally like knocking stuff off of it and everything. So, they are very much pulling a little bit from Stray with that. This might have been in work well before Stray came out, but they know why people are showing up to play this game.
You want to be a cat.
Yeah, if this game were
Everybody
made,
wants to be a cat.
Honestly,
if this game were made and you were being a horse, it's a lot less interesting to the audience, I think.
Unless you're a horse girl.
Yeah.
Yes.
But a cat's the only cat who knows where it's at.
You're just going to keep.
So anyways, very kind of cute, fun game. And I could see if you like that silver puzzle game, this probably be right up your alley. The second game I played was one called Deliver at All Cost. So this is, again, sort of a 3/4 overhead view. So it's sort of like Grand Theft Auto, and sort of has a bit of a sense of the original Grand Theft Auto games 1 and 2. Not quite as overhead at those, a little lower of a view, and certainly like a fully 3D world, right? But I guess the real pitch of this is that the environments are fully destructible. So other vehicles, buildings, trees, everything you can drive through. And basically you having to deliver stuff. So like the first mission, you're delivering fireworks, and as you're driving, the fireworks are going off in the back of your truck. And so some of them are exploding onto the road in front of you, and you have to avoid those. And your vehicle takes damage, so you can basically like knock the wheels off your vehicle as you go and everything. I don't love how this game controls, and it has two different control methods. You can either do like a full drive where you press in any direction, or you can do the more traditional, like left turns the steering wheel left, right turns the steering wheel right. I like that more traditional control method, that because I just can't wrap my head around the go wherever you press.
Yeah.
But like it still doesn't just control super well, and like some of that's intentional, right? Because it wants to be zany and kind of out of control, but it never felt good enough to me. And I really like the way the game looks. There are some parts where you get out of the car and go do stuff. I found those parts kind of laborsome. Like I just wasn't interested.
Yeah.
And so like a neat little game. Maybe the full game is better, but having just played the demo, I was kind of left, So, I'll see what I hear from other people about it. Maybe other people will say rave about the full game when it gets released. But I don't think that one has a release date yet. But Schrodinger's cat, I think, actually is already available.
Oh, nice.
Out.
Or is it?
Yeah, we don't know. How could one know? I will say I played one other game. I forgot. I played a game called Snow, spelled SN and then O with the line through it, which is like an umlaut or something.
No, umlaut's the two dots above.
No, I mean, it's like an umlaut. Oh. Is my point. So anyways, it's weird. It's hard to find in Steam when you're searching for it, because if you type in SNO, it will not show up in Steam. Wow. So like this is one of those things of we sort of outsmarted like the search engine and like made our game impossible to find. So this is like sort of backcountry skiing, and it has a very like generated mountainside and everything that you're going through. And I just did not like it very much at all. And I love the idea of a good skiing game. I love the old SSX games. And, even stuff like Snowboard Kids and stuff on the N64. Sorry, I just wanted to make a reference Mario could relate
1080 snowboarding?
Yeah.
Also on the N64. I'm going to say one thing. It's called Snow Ultimate Free Riding, if you want to be able to find it.
Yeah. And so the demos...
But apparently we don't want to be able to find it.
Well,
it looks cool.
Yeah, it looks really cool. It wasn't as fun as it looked. And so maybe I just need to play it more. So, I mean, I will grant it that I did not play a ton of it. So what I played, I wasn't super engaged with, but the trailer looks a lot cooler than what I was doing.
Yeah, the trailer, I would consider... I don't know if I'd spend $10 on it just because I don't really want to spend $10, but that's a game like if it went on sale, I'd be like, oh yeah, I would pick this up.
Well, try the demo, and maybe the demo will connect with you and make it feel like it's worth $10. It actually felt an awful lot like a phone game to me. Like even it put up the controls on screen as you're playing, like kind of superimpose them. I was like, this feels like on a phone, this might just be you put your fingers where those buttons are showing right now. And so it's not bad. It's just, it wasn't engaging for me. I am still chasing that SSX high. And I can't believe that Electronic Arts has been like, we give up. We're not doing this again. We're just going to make more FIFA DLC. Actually, I understand why they're doing that, because they like money. It's very depressing for me. All right, so let's move on into news. And the biggest news lately has been we had a PlayStation State of Play. So this is, this is not a PlayStation Showcase, because they have different names and the names are confusing. Nobody can keep them straight generally, but like this is their smaller show showcasing games. This seemed to be like a preview of here's what's coming out in 2025 and into 2026. So they showed quite a few games for this. One of the big ones that they ended with was a game called Saros, I think is probably how you pronounce that. This is from Housemarque, who made Returnal. And this looks very much like a Returnal kind of direct follow-up. It's not teased as a direct sequel, but they showed kind of like a brief glimpse of something that looked like the sort of bullet hell that Returnal had and everything in it.
It looks amazing.
I
I'm
saw
looking at pictures online.
Yeah.
Wow.
When I saw the trailer, I was like, oh, this looks a lot like Returnal. And then I Googled Housemarque. Like, that's because they made Returnal.
I think that was everyone's reaction to the trailer. Like, this looks a lot like Returnal.
Yeah.
They made a game called Ex Machina that I really like. That is sort of an overhead dual stick shooter, and like not a lot of people play that, but that's a really good game. Let's see. Borderlands 4 gets a release date of September 23rd.
Got to follow up on the success of the movie, you know.
So hear me out. What if the movie was purposefully bad for them to be like, hey, we've got a new game coming out. Don't you want to return to good Borderlands? And people are like, thank you. Whatever company puts this game out.
Take Two.
We love you again. And back there, they're sitting there, producer style, like, heh, heh, heh.
Yeah. This is not the producers. People in Hollywood are not this clever, unfortunately.
No, they're stupid when they cancel things. It's things like Coyote versus Acme to make their tax dollars back.
Yeah, I mean, they spent a lot of money on that Borderlands movie, so I think they were all in on that being.
Didn't they have like several like big stars? In
Kate
that
Blanchett.
Kate
Yeah, Kate
Blanchett,
Blanchett.
Kevin Hart, Jack Black.
Yeah, that's a lot.
Jamie Lee Curtis.
I was like,
Yeah.
she alone, like, because I know she's.
Well, but
not
at least but she's like a big video game person, so I
don't
can
know.
see doing it like for the
she
fun
also
of it.
really likes money.
Not that she wouldn't have a high charge, but I could see like people like her and Jack Black doing it just for the fun of it.
I don't know
But-
about the movie part. Like so when Mikey, came to Dead by Daylight, she did their like big launch thing. Like I could see her doing stuff like that for fun. When it comes to an actual movie though, I don't know.
I don't think she did it just for fun, but I could see it being like, oh yeah, it's a mid-tier script, but it's a video game movie, so it'll be a fun time.
I mean,
Okay.
Jack Black, I get more because like
Yes.
he's just a voice in the movie. So
Yeah.
like you
He's
come
the little
in,
raccoon thing.
The little robot
Oh,
thing
yeah,
that
like,
you
I
just
obviously-
want to punt across the room
I
the
obviously
entire movie.
missed this like Oscar-worthy like, cinematic experience. So
I mean, like you bring him in for a couple of days of voice recording and he gets a healthy paycheck and
Yep.
he doesn't have to do anything else. Like, so I completely understand him. It's the people who read that script and were like, yes, I will go on set.
Kate Blanchett.
for
Kate
like,
Blanchett is the one who still shocks me. I'm like, that they must have paid you good.
plus I think that film like shot in Australia or something. Like, I don't think it shot in the US. So
Yeah.
they were having to travel for it.
That's what they went. Trip to Australia. Let's go.
Yeah. Well, you're not going to the fun part of Australia. You're going to the part that can kill you.
Right? Which is actually 75% of Australia. No, I'm just kidding.
No, it really is.
Yeah. Only 75%. Are we sure?
I think like maybe Bondi or Sydney is like the only part that won't.
Yeah. Let's see. Metal Gear Solid Delta got a launch date as well for August 28th. Oh, I did want to point out that September 23rd date for Borderlands is important since it's Take-Two releasing that because they are also supposedly still releasing Grand Theft Auto 6 this year. So they're not going to cannibalize their own release, which means like you can start kind of playing from that date and going, well, Grand Theft Auto is probably at least a month away from that release date. So if you're starting to figure out when Grand Theft Auto 6 might come out, probably not till the end of October at the earliest, because they would want to, give some time there for Borderlands.
Yeah.
But anyways, Metal Gear Solid Delta, that's the remake of Part 3. That's coming out August 28th. They showed off a new trailer for Sonic Racing CrossWorlds. We had heard of this before and seen a brief trailer, but they showed a more in-depth trailer for it. I included this because pretty sure I've talked on this podcast before. I am a huge fan of Sonic All-Stars Transformed, which was the first of this sort of new series of Sonic racing games. We're not including Sonic R and some
I was going to say, when you said you were going to talk about another game related to this, I was like, is it going to be Sonic R?
No, don't even include that. That's something entirely different.
That game is trash.
But Sonic All-Stars Transformed, or whatever the full name of that game is a fantastic kart racing game. Like, it is maybe the best kart racing game outside of a Mario Kart game. And is like one of those games that gets really criminally overlooked and everything. And then they made a sequel to it, which was just like the Sonic Racing. And they cut out all the courses themed from other Sega games, all the guest characters from other Sonic game or Sega games, and just made it Sonic focused, which isn't inherently bad, but like it lost a lot of the personality in doing so. And also it wasn't a very good racing game. This one from the trailer looks like they're hedging back towards what they did with Transform. So this shows them in carts, it shows them in boats, it shows them in flying vehicles. It also shows them, like, the sort of caveat is at the end of the first lap, you are given, the racer who's in first place is given a choice of 2 portals to go through, and that will take you into like an alternate, like, sort of world. It's the CrossWorlds, and some of those are straight out of other Sega games. Cool. They showed like the battleship from Top Gun, which was in Sonic Transformed. So it seems like they're pulling some of that back in. They haven't shown any guest characters, but I would wager pretty heavily we're going to get some of those guest characters from other Sega games. And so if this is really a sequel, spiritually at least, to that Sonic Transform, if they can nail the way that game felt and played, it should be something really special. Because again, that's still like outside of Mario Kart is, and maybe Crash Team Racing is like one of the best kart racing games ever made. And that's my high praise for a Sonic game. You think I don't like Sonic games? I like good Sonic games.
Yeah. No, I'm looking forward to this. And like even just seeing like, they're bringing back the characters from Sonic Riders and the Extreme Gear, which like Sonic Riders I know is not a fantastic game, but darn if I don't enjoy it anyways. It's nostalgic for me. So like just seeing that come back, and then like you said, the potential for expanding it in such a way that they're playing with other Sega worlds. Will we get, oh my gosh, what's his name? Dream.
Knights. Will we get Knights in there? This is going to be a cool game. Yeah, Knights was in Transformed, and so you start to go, that would make sense.
Well, and he even had cameo in Sonic Adventure 1. He's in one of the pinball machines, and you go to his world.
Yeah. Knights, one of those franchises that just they've never been able to do anything with.
Yeah.
And they made that one game, and people like that one game, and then just never were able to replicate it in any way. Let's see. Warriors Abyss is a spinoff of the Dynasty Warriors series. So this is kind of a 3/4 overhead perspective, but it's a roguelike. So it's you battling, tons of enemies all on the screen at the same time, like in the Dynasty Warrior games, but in the form of a roguelike game, which makes a whole lot of sense. Like if you're going to have just tons of enemies to fight on screen at once, to like kind of pair that up with a roguelike, that seems to make a whole lot of sense.
So other people probably feel differently. There's a point during this trailer where they were like highlighting all of the different combinations or iterations of ways that things can be combined or whatever. And it was like over 18 trillion different or 18 billion different things. I'm like, nah, I ain't doing that. Like that number is too big.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know. Like this game obviously I think is aping Hades heavily.
Oh, sure.
And I feel like those games from Hades, Hades specifically, but like there are other games that developer has made, all kind of do that. Like Transistor and those all talk about all
Supergiant.
Supergiant, all the different weapon combinations
that
you can do. And so I feel like they're playing off of that in the very similar way.
Oh, yeah. I'm sure if you pull up all the potential permutations of like an Isaac run that exist or any of those roguelikes, it's probably that high of a number as well. But it's like them actually putting it on screen. I was like, that's overwhelming. I can't do that. No, thank you.
Well, this is like Borderlands when they used to advertise, we have millions of guns in our game. And you're like, they're guns. Like, you can't have millions of guns. And you come to find out, it's like, well, this one does 1.3 damage, and this does 1.34 damage, and those are separate guns. And so I imagine it's a lot of that going on. Let's see. Liza P showed off their new DLC called Overture, which is going to be a prequel in snowy environments. So they're kind of mixing up the look and everything and giving us a prequel.
Yeah, this looks really cool. Liza P is one of those games that I love watching people play. I could never play it because I'm not that good of a gamer to do Souls-likes, but it's such a fascinating adaptation. And so like even just like obviously I'm looking forward to when they eventually do the sequel, but getting to go back there for a prequel is still I'm excited to see people playing this.
This is not the thing teased at the end of the original game.
No, it is not.
So for some clarity.
That will be a sequel. This is a prequel.
Yeah, this was exciting. This got me considering going back and playing Lies of P, or I didn't finish it, but like going back and playing it some more, or potentially finishing it. It was an exciting one to see for sure.
I wonder, like, we've talked about it on here before, like, what is the value of DLC in this day and age? Like, especially this like kind of story-based DLC, right? Because there's so many games, and DLC like this will come out over a year later. Like, this is 2 years later, right? Like, that game came out in 2023.
Yes.
And, like, are people going to go back and play it? I think this might be an exception where people might, just because it feels like the sort of like interlude in between this and the sequel.
Yeah. I'll say it's giving the same vibe that like Final Fantasy VII Remake Intergrade did, where like you get that kind of more in depth for characters who, whether like with Intergrade you knew that Yuffie was going to be there somewhere, or like here you're kind of getting teases of like some characters who were referenced in the original game in like a flashback scene. So I think people will come back to it for this one.
Yeah, I know it's not the same thing because it was a full game, but this kind of feels like the Miles Morales Spider-Man game in the sense like this is probably more than just like a basic DLC, but this is like a miniature version of a game. It's like not a mid-tier.
An expand-alone.
Yeah. That's certainly what my hope for this would be, is that it's something to that extent.
And I wonder if they'll release it that way, as an expand-alone.
It does. I want to say I saw that the base game was required.
Okay. All right. Well, we'll probably get a gold package of that game now. So if you have not bought Liza P, I would wait until this DLC comes out. Probably save yourself some money. They announced a Days Gone remaster for the PlayStation 5. I feel like they are just trolling that guy who made Days Gone and complained about that they wouldn't let him do a sequel. Because first they put Days Gone in Astrobot and he complained about that. And now they're doing a remaster on the PlayStation 5. And I feel like they're just fucking with that guy at this point. And that kind of amuses me. But yeah, remaster is going to be $10. So if you have the PlayStation 4 version, you can upgrade to this remaster for $10. Then they're also putting out, I guess they're not doing a graphical update on the PC, but they are doing some of the additional features on PC. So that'll be sold as DLC as well on the PC version. People love Days Gone. It didn't sell super well, but the fans of it really, really love that game.
Yeah.
And it feels like a game that, because it is about how many enemies it can have on screen. It feels like a graphical update will maybe make that a little more appealing to some fans. Mm-hmm. Let's see. Shinobi, Art of Vengeance is coming out August 29th. We knew there was a new Shinobi game in the works. I think this is the first images we've actually seen of this. Mm-hmm. It is a very stylized sort of Mark of the Ninja style 2D action game, which is, of course, what the original Shinobi games were. I know I'm the old fuddy-duddy, but I think this game looks amazing.
I thought it looked cool.
Yeah, this game looks very cool.
I saw of it, yeah.
And if this is what Sega is going to do with, like, revisiting these old franchises, like, I love Sega for what Sega once was. What Sega is today is sometimes disappointing to me. It's like, okay, another Total War game. Those are actually really good games, but that's not Sega to me. Yeah. And seeing them come out with a good-looking Sonic game and this Shinobi game in the same show, like, actually made me pretty excited for all the other things that they're revisiting and doing. Because it feels like a Sega that has figured out how to make games again, this style of games. Right, how to update their franchises. So that's pretty exciting. There is a new Five Nights at Freddy's game called Secret of the Mimic. That's coming out June 13th. Coincidentally, there's a new Five Nights at Freddy movie coming out this year.
I was about to say, it's coming out around the same time. Dead by Daylight, their 10-year anniversary is in June, and they've already announced that because they have a big character reveal, they've already announced that it's going to be a Five Nights at Freddy's killer, at least. I don't know about Survivor.
So it's got to be the bear, right?
No, it's actually
I would say it's probably going to be Purple Guy.
It's Springtrap.
Well, Springtrap is Purple Guy.
Is it?
Yeah.
Oh. Well, Springtrap
is Purple Guy after he gets... Yeah.
Yeah. The lore for that, like...
FNAF lore is such a hot mess.
It really is. It's like...
Because the problem is Scott Cawthon thinks that he, like, claims that he has all these ideas that he's building to something, and he's not. He's just not. Making it game by game, and that's fine, but just admit it, man.
It's more convoluted than Resident Evil, which
it's more convoluted than Kingdom Hearts.
Yeah.
Big doubt on that one.
I don't know, man.
Because Kingdom Hearts you can make sense of. It takes time and energy, but you can.
No, this one is like...
You can tell yourself that that's a believable thing.
No, you don't understand how convoluted FNAF lore is.
It is
but I know how convoluted Kingdom Hearts lore is.
And so with people that know both,
this is the biggest fight I've seen the two of you get into. And the fact that it's over Five Nights at Freddy's.
Well, I'm just saying that two people who know the lore of both are telling you that FNAF is more convoluted. Because, I think you're right. You can somewhat make sense of Kingdom Hearts.
I'm not saying Kingdom Hearts isn't convoluted, but you can, with time and energy, make sense of it.
Five Nights at Freddy's, it's going along one path, and then, look, this game where they wanted to introduce this crazy character and then had to make it make sense, and so they made up some bullshit. And, there's no rhyme or reason.
Well, you're describing Kingdom Hearts.
Even Scott Cawthon has confirmed that,
it's retconned the game.
There's a box that it's like, the big mystery of what's in the box or whatever. And he's confirmed that they figured that the internet figured it out. And so he changed his mind because the internet figured it out.
Yes.
That's at least Kingdom Hearts has a goal of maintaining what they're doing.
No, it does not.
I mean, like I said, there's no point in arguing. This is not an award either that these franchises want. But
most convoluted lore is definitely FNAF.
It might be at our next game of the year.
I say this as someone who has never played FNAF, never watched a playthrough. I've just watched lore breakdown videos, and I've like watched enough people who have played it.
I've never played it myself because the first time I watched it, I peed a little. Like when the fox, especially
I think it's just Foxy.
No, oh yeah,
fox.
yeah, Foxy. No. Listen, you.
What does the fox say?
He doesn't. He just murders you.
Yep.
I mean, I watched the movie.
I watched the CinemaSins version of the movie. I watched the Matt Pat scene.
I watched the movie and on Halloween actually, when it the Halloween after it came out, and I was so sad.
All I'm saying is one of those franchises was apparently made enough sense to make a film for.
No.
No.
People love money. Like
Also,
we have already established this.
the film is not the games.
It is not.
Well,
It is
hang on a second.
We're not talking about the games. We're talking about the lore.
Mario.
Good luck, Square Enix, trying to make a Kingdom Hearts game.
But see, they'll make a movie.
I was gonna say a Kingdom Hearts movie would follow the games more than the FNAF
I
movie
think so.
follows the FNAF game lore,
Yes.
and that's not even getting into the FNAF books. That's not getting into any
Well,
of the crap that is out there for FNAF.
But let's actually address this as what the difference is. Kingdom Hearts is two huge companies coming together and making a game and building that into a franchise, and the franchise makes no sense whatsoever. Five Nights at Freddy was one guy making a series of mobile games originally and making it up as he went along and everything. But I think one of those is a lot more of a sin against storytelling.
See, I think that the more money, the more popular FNAF became, the more into drugs he got. The story went.
Well, I would say, and here's the thing about Scott Cawthon is spiteful.
Yes.
When fans figure things out, he changes things to make it so the fans weren't right anymore. That's the sin for me. I can live with a convoluted universe, but when you're mad that you gave enough hints for fans to figure things out, that you change it to get back at them and be petty, that's the sin for me.
Yeah. And it's obvious that it's a whole money grab thing because the movie's coming out at the same time. This deal with Dead by Daylight, they're going to make a shit ton of money off of that.
Yeah.
And then they're like, you know what? We might as well just make a game to go out too.
Well, let me ask you,
I will say,
are you going to buy the character for Dead by Daylight?
No, because I'm not if they have a survivor, I might. I'm not a killer main, so.
Because,
but I will say,
part of what I wonder about this franchise. Sorry, Alicia, I'll come back to you in a second. But part of what I wonder about this franchise is how is there this much legs still left in this franchise? Because the kids who grew up playing these games on the iPad or something, right? Are they still playing these games? Is it a new generation that's being brought in?
Well, so that's actually what I was about to talk about.
Because that film did nothing to bring me in.
No.
But that's actually what I was going to hit on is FNAF is it came out, and it wasn't mobile games, it was PC, but it came out at the time.
It was on mobile devices as well.
Right, but it wasn't. It's not like it was. It was made for PC. It wasn't made for mobile. But FNAF came out at a time when I was 10, and Markiplier played the hell out of it, and Jacksepticeye played the hell out of it,
yeah.
and so those are the core nostalgia years for my generation of this is one of the games that introduced my generation to jump scare games and horror games.
What I think though kind of gets at what Justin's talking about and also kind of bridges what you're saying is that you mentioned, right, that Kingdom Hearts is these two major franchises coming together versus this one guy. And I think what Alicia is arguing is that it's not just one guy. It is several people building on the lore, making these stories, and he will take some of those ideas, shift them slightly, and then put them in. So it's a bunch of people that have built this fan base and they're the ones that are keeping it alive. The people who are really into it.
Well, and especially because Scott Cawthon has some, I'll just say, wacky political views, and so in the last 4 years, the fandom has kind of cut him out and disowned him, and he's stepped back. So he's not the lead developer on this game anymore. It's still his company, but he's not the one doing it. And so with that even more, it's a very similar thing to what we see with Harry Potter, where people have cut out J.K. Rowling and because we feel like these things are so important to who we are that we have ownership in them. And so the people who feel like they have that stake in FNAF are absolutely going to go batshit for it.
Yeah, but my thing is, how big of an audience is that at this point? That because every franchise loses fans over time, right?
Right, but you've also got at the same time people my age who have kids now, and this is a quote unquote kid friendly horror game, so they introduce their kids to it young.
Okay, but my question is, how is it really bringing in that many new fans? I'm not arguing that this game was important to you when you were 10 years old. I'm arguing
a surprising amount, because
I would say, but that's what I'm saying, where it's bringing in generationally new fans.
I don't know how. To answer that part of your question, I have no idea how, because the lore is so convoluted. The games themselves, once you've been jump scared a few times, it gets old. And with the lore not second, I don't know how.
I will say the convoluted lore is part of the draw.
I guess.
Because people want to figure it out.
Not for me. And so I would buy that, because the only reason that they are coming to Dead by Daylight is because fans petitioned it. And they have been petitioning it for pretty much since The Hag came out, so the last 5 years.
No, I mean, it's a weird franchise.
Oh, it's such a weird franchise.
Because those games aren't good.
Mm-mm.
After you've played one,
you've played them all, basically.
Yeah. And so how is it continuing to bring that in is really interesting. And I don't believe it's all these people have kids now. That alone is not what's sustaining this as a franchise. To be putting out a new game, to be putting out a second movie, to it's really kind of interesting because
there's 15 of these games.
Yeah.
There's so many of them. And I mean, when you're putting out slop, it doesn't really matter. You're just reusing the same things over and over again. It's the same game every time. That's probably really easy to just pump them out.
I think the first 3 games all came out 1 year after the other.
So I can get that, but yeah, I've never been all that interested in the games. And so I think that's where, how is it sustained this long is, I think, is a really interesting question.
Because you're talking about Dead by Daylight, that's purely a nostalgia play, right? That's why people want it in there, and the same reason they want, Jason Voorhees in there and stuff. It's people who grew up with that, wanting that character, because Jason Voorhees as a character has not been relevant in 20 years.
But I guess and again, kind of echoing, connecting the two of you, that's nostalgia for a particular generation of horror fans, and then FNAF would be a nostalgia for a particular generation of horror fans.
And that's why I say I completely get it for Five Nights at for Dead by Daylight.
And I don't have a good answer for why it's. I mean, because
people are buying them.
I was I couldn't tell you why people. My theory on why people are buying it is, again, that let me share my fandom now with my kids. I couldn't tell you why 10-year-olds now who don't have family members who like the games.
It feels very because it is sold as a children's horror thing, and the jump scares and everything else. It feels like an edgy children's game.
I mean, I don't mean to diminish the one you talk. It feels like the same thing as that kindergarten game. People are going to get brought in because it's what if we take this supposedly wholesome thing and we make it edgy, and you're going to get all the 13-year-olds who are yes, it's awesome.
Yeah.
So that would be my the only thing I can think of is that.
Well, that's why everybody got into it when it came out.
Yes. And even though it's convoluted and whatever, like each game is another chance to scoop up a whole new set of young adolescents to be like, oh, hey, look at this.
And I mean, I'm sure just like Kingdom Hearts, the majority of the fan base probably doesn't care about the deeper story that's going on.
Oh, no, they do.
I'd say the majority probably don't. The same way that the majority of Kingdom Hearts fans are just like, I like this game.
Yeah.
I like that I can play with Goofy.
You've got a like legitimate sized group that really do care, who are like all in, but that is not the majority of fan bases.
See, I think the difference for me on that is, like you said, once you've played one FNAF game, you've played them all. Versus,
but I don't know, man. Once you've played like Kingdom Hearts, like they're similar in a way.
But I mean, in some ways, I'd say that it almost has that going for it, in that if they're all the same, well, it doesn't matter where I start.
I would say the difference between the two and why Kingdom Hearts may have more people who follow the stuff is because I think there's a gender difference between the games. Like, I think FNAF feels like a 13-year-old boy game, which is what we've been talking about, whereas Kingdom Hearts feels more young girls, women may have played it.
I know lots of women who play no video games and play Kingdom Hearts.
Yes. And I think that, again, this gender thing of like being driven more by narrative, even if it's complex, versus 13-year-old boys who just want to be jump scared and be like, oh, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like,
and see, I think the difference for me is like FNAF is one of the, game theory. The biggest game theory videos are like the Sans' Nest video and the FNAF videos. So like I think game theory is what brings a lot of people is what keeps a lot of people hooked on FNAF and maybe brought people in. And like you can't be in FNAF without knowing about MatPat. So that's where I come from on like I think more FNAF people care about or have cared at some point before realizing that Scott Cawthon didn't care about the lore.
Maybe. Like, I would just wager most 13-year-old kids don't care anything about the lore. Like, I would imagine most of them are playing it for the jump scares, at least initially, right? Yeah. And so, like...
all the 13-year-olds I know cared about the lore.
At least for the first one. I mean, when the game first came out, there was very little... Right, like that's something that was
why people were. That was why people wanted to know more about the lore.
That's what I mean. Like it gets established over time. Yeah. The game is at first this Chuck E. Cheese, scary Chuck E. Cheese game, and then it's it's fans like you said yearning for more. But like I think the initial interest in it is,
or they're interested in the lore only as much as they can make memes, because like they're the whole like the bite of 83. Is it 83?
Bite of 83 or the Bite of 87. Scott Cawthon goes back and forth.
Right. And that's why I second guessed myself.
They're both.
That's like a meme that I still hear. Like if I'm watching a gamer.
I was watching a video literally yesterday of Deltarune artists playing Gartic Phone, and they did the Bite of 83.
Yep. Where it's something happened, like a predictable thing, and it's like, oh, the Bite of 83, and so yeah. Yeah, we can move on.
Yeah.
No, I mean, I'm very interested in like what the sales of those games are at this point, because I really do wonder like where is that? Is it a dedicated 50,000 people who are super deep into the lore, right? Because I don't think the vast majority of people who play a Five Nights at Freddy game are super deep into the lore, because the vast majority of anybody who interacts with anything is not super deep into the lore, right? Like most people who play Kingdom Hearts are not super deep into the lore, right? Not at the level of...
So I found a Reddit post if we want like a quick...
Yeah.
As of June 2nd, 2023, so 2 years ago, FNAF 1 made over 250,000. FNAF 2 made over 350,000.
Are these copies sold?
No.
This is earnings on Steam.
Yeah,
on Steam. So
okay.
FNAF 3, 250, over 250. FNAF 4, 340. Sister Location did 300. The Help Wanted was over 700,000, and then Security Breach made over $3 million.
Is that the first 3D game?
Yes, I believe so.
Yeah.
Help Wanted only sold 23,000 copies. And so, yeah, Security Breach was the best-selling with 75,000 copies. Likely to be 100,000 once Ruin released. So it's probably over 100,000 now.
Yeah. So, like, even selling 100,000 copies, right? Like, that's actually a really small audience, right?
Yeah,
So
comparatively.
FNAF had Markiplier in game theory.
Like, when you talk about comparing that to, like, well, what do we have on here this week that just passed 2 million copies?
Shadow and Sonic.
Yeah, Sonic and Shadow's Generations just passed 2 million copies, right?
Yeah.
And so, like, these games, they keep pumping them out, but they're selling to a maximum of 100,000 people, it sounds like. That's not a huge audience in video games, right? The cultural impact of those games is far outweighed by the sales of them. So that's where I'm coming from with it. It's not about the quality of the games. Like, I don't care anything about them. Like, it is that these games disproportionately hold a place in video games compared to how well they actually sell.
Yeah.
Which is why I'm interested when they put out a new one. I'm like, well, how well is that selling? I think part of the secret is those games are made dirt cheap.
Yeah.
So, like, anything just about is turning a profit off of them. But, like, that's actually, like, makes it kind of even more interesting that, again, I would say, given those sales numbers, it very much sounds like it is a very small, dedicated fan base that is super into the lore. And then there's, like, some people who are dropping in and out sampling each new game. They might buy this one and skip the next two and buy another one.
Yeah, hearing those numbers, I would say, okay, no, these are people who are heavily invested as compared to thinking if this was like a Kingdom Hearts where you're selling 1 or 2 million copies. You've got 150,000 people who really, really care about it and will dissect it to all ends. And other people are just like, it's Donald. Whereas for this, it's probably, the same 50,000 people that are buying every single one. And then, people sort of, oh, this one, maybe I'll check this one out.
And I think they're similar in that they both draw in people because of the novelty. A lot of people played Kingdom Hearts originally because it was Disney characters.
Sure. Yep.
And a lot of people are playing these games because, it is the
Evil Chuck E. Cheese.
Yeah. And, like, that's the appeal, right? And so, those numbers better contextualize it because, like, I wasn't sure. If you had told me that first game sold a few million copies, now that's just Steam numbers. That's not including mobile. And like, I think more people played that on mobile than they did on Steam.
Well, and honestly, I think more people watched it than played it because, like,
That's a thing.
That's
I
probably also
cannot
true.
drive home enough how important Markiplier is for these games and how important MapPad is.
But, like, that's really kind of interesting to hear those sorts of numbers and everything because it does sort of drive home that point that this is a very small audience, but, like, a very, like, diehard audience.
Yeah.
Well, I think Alicia's probably making a correct point in the sense that, like, while 100,000 people bought this game, 1 million, 2 million, 5 million probably watched it. And so I think this is maybe one of those, I'm not going to say only games, but, like, one of the first games where it is the audience that knows about it and watched it is far bigger than those who've actually played it.
That's me. I watched the first 3 games. And then I was like, oh, this is the same thing over and over and over. So.
Yeah, I think that's one of those games, one of the first games to really be made by streamers, right? Like,
and sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I was going to end the conversation.
Yeah, go ahead.
I was going to say, and just like we said earlier, as it holds more cultural weight in gaming than compared to the numbers, it has held more weight in this conversation and this podcast episode than also probably deserved.
But I'm always interested in things like
of course.
And Roblox and these things that, like, sort of exist on the margins of video games but, like, hold this huge impact, right? Like, they don't get talked about in mainstream gaming an awful lot. and but they hold this pretty big impact and everything. Roblox is a little different because Roblox is making billions of dollars, but I guess Five Nights at Freddy's has with all of the merchandising and everything included. All right, they also showed off a game called The Midnight Walk.
Oh yeah, we're still talking about the PlayStation State of Play, not just FNAF.
This is out May 8th, and looks really cool. Has a stop motion animated look to the graphics and everything, sort of a nightmare come alive and everything stop motion. So it sort of reminded me of something like, not exactly the same look, but something kind of similar in style to like The Corpse Bride or something of that nature. They also showed off a game called Darwin's Paradox, which is a platformer where you play an octopus.
Love that.
This is from Konami. By the way, Konami also published Deliver at All Costs, so it's kind of interesting to see Konami back in video games. And this just looked really cool. Probably the most interesting thing about this is the developers put out a press release that they adopted an octopus in the development of this game.
I love that.
So that looked pretty neat. Mario, I think you said there were a couple other games you want to talk about.
I think the ones that I know we got a date for Split Fiction, the new Hazelight Studio game, which that's pretty exciting. And we had heard and seen that game before, but to get a date, it's soon. I want to say it's March 5th.
Yeah, I think it is early March.
So that's pretty exciting. And then, of course, the fact that there's a new PlayStation 4 game coming out, the Onimusha 2 remake.
Oh, right.
Is coming to PlayStation 4, which I thought was wow, that's a kind of incredible.
Yeah.
But I think the fact that there's a new Onimusha game coming out after that one, I think is also pretty exciting.
Yeah.
It looks pretty incredible.
I wonder, with them putting out that Onimusha 2 remake for the PlayStation 4, I wonder if in the next year or so, we're going to get an awful lot of games targeting PlayStation 4 because it'll make it easier to port to the Switch 2.
Oh, maybe. That I also just wonder if you put it on the PlayStation 4, everybody can play it in the sense that PlayStation 4 owners can play it. PlayStation 5 owners, I assume, will be able to play it. And yeah, you'll be able to port it more easily to whatever the Switch is. So yeah, I think that's definitely, that's an intriguing point to make.
All right, that does it for the State of Play. Lots of cool stuff shown, though. I think, Mario, I think you made this comment at the time that a lot of these games just all look alike.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, a number of the games we didn't talk about, there's Tides of Annihilation and Lost Stories Aside or something like that. And it's just they all look incredible. It's not to say they look bad, but they all just look like the same game.
They all have that Unreal Engine look, which so many games are powered by the Unreal Engine now, and there's nothing distinctive about them. They're not stylizing it in a particular way, and so all the games end up looking alike. One of the things I was really happy about with that Shinobi game is they gave it a distinctive look because, it's so easy now for people to make 2D action games, and so many of those little indie 2D action games end up just looking kind of alike. And I felt like that game actually kind of stood out where you'd be even if this didn't have Shinobi on it, I'd still be interested based on the look.
Yeah, there's something stylized about it that looks really nice.
Let's see. In other PlayStation news, PlayStation has claimed that they are planning more family-friendly games like Astrobot. So this is something we talked about on the podcast at length about how the sort of family-friendly games had kind of been abandoned by PlayStation and Xbox.
Yeah.
Not even necessarily content when we say family-friendly, but complexity, accessibility of the game. Your sort of Spyro and Crash and Ratchet
Sly
and Clank.
Cooper.
Yeah, Sly Cooper. They just don't make a lot of those games like they used to.
Yeah, I was about to say, in what is thankfully the least surprising news on here, that they're making more family-friendly games like Astrobot, considering its success.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking.
And that was a relatively cheap game for them to make too, right? Like they're not spending $200 million making an Astrobot game, and then for that game to win many Game of the Year awards and like sell quite a bit. I'm sure they see the value in that. They can also pump those games out a lot quicker than a new Spider-Man game.
I would think so.
So PlayStation, does this mean we're finally getting Sly Cooper 5? Please?
Probably not until Ghost of Yosei comes out. It's the same company.
Well, you also wonder, like, do they take some of those titles and give bring in support studios to work on those games? Because it doesn't require, like, the full strength of the studio behind it.
Maybe. And maybe it's just because, the most diehard Sly Cooper fan I know is Alicia, but I also feel like if Alicia is a representative of Sly Cooper fans, there might be a little bit upset if it's not Sucker Punch making them.
Yeah.
Especially with how long it's been and apparently leaving on a cliffhanger and all that sort of stuff. I think there would be people who are upset, like, we gave this to some other studio to work on.
Yeah. I would be bummed.
That's not to say that other studio couldn't do an incredible job, but I feel like there would be some hesitancy if that was what was announced.
Yeah, I mean, Sony needs games.
Yeah, totally.
I just wonder if they might not try that.
And Sucker Punch might be a big enough studio where they can have two teams working at once.
Sure. I would actually be surprised if Sucker Punch doesn't have two teams.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, Insomniac does, for example.
Yeah, and maybe it's one of those things with the success of Astrobot. You're like, maybe we should have a team that's devoted to making something like a Sly Cooper, and then we can have another team that's devoted to making something closer to a Ghost.
That's my hope.
Well, speaking of success, the PlayStation 5 has passed 75 million shipments. So that is not necessarily sold hardware, but hardware that's been shipped out to retailers. But that's still a pretty big number for them to hit at this point in the history of the system. Last I saw, they were ahead of PlayStation 4 at the same point in its lifespan. It doesn't feel that way, I feel like, a lot of times. But, this is selling quite well. It's not doing Switch numbers, but, like, the Switch is now like the second best-selling console of all time. Yeah. So that's to maybe not be expected. But still, PlayStation 5 seems quite healthy. I did see some numbers on the Xbox SX systems, and that they are somewhere down around 29 million.
Oof.
So just to give some context of how not great the Xbox is selling. Mm-hmm. And if you wonder why Xbox is putting all their games onto other platforms, that is the reason why. Let's see. So in some negative news for Sony, we give them all the positive props, but let's give the negative here as well. PlayStation Network went down for nearly 24 hours. This is a couple weeks ago. Sony apologized with 5 days of service to make up. You will not be surprised to hear that many fans were not placated by that 5 days of service.
What?
So we talked a little bit earlier about Grand Theft Auto 6. There is a new report out that Grand Theft Auto 6 is adding Roblox, Fortnite-style user-generated content into the game. So the ideal being that players could create content. That content could be accessed by other players in the game, that this might be a revenue-generating thing where players could, say, build new areas into the land or create new modifications and then would sell those. And, of course, Rockstar and Take-Two would take a cut of those sales. Yeah. So similar in the way to how Roblox and Fortnite have monetized themselves. There's also a rumor that the Grand Theft Auto 6 would get an early 2026 release for the PC. So this fall, it seems like it's only going to be PlayStation 5 and Xbox Series S and X, and that a PC release would come sometime in early 2026. That's kind of interesting because when they did release Part 5, the PC release was over a year later. Mm-hmm. So this would be a much quicker turnaround and port to the PC. Nintendo has announced that Switch game vouchers will not work on Switch 2. So if you have any of those Switch game vouchers, you better spend them now on Switch games. There's no sense in holding out, unless you're holding out for a Metroid Prime 4 when it comes out on Switch. They're still saying, or the Pokemon ZA. Those are both still coming to Switch theoretically, not Switch 2.
I've never heard it called Pokemon ZA.
Pokemon Pizza.
Hey, that's how they spell it. That's how it's going to get pronounced.
Everyone has said Legend ZA, Pokemon ZA.
So they announced that those are not coming. Those are not going to work. My theory why those are not going to work is that Switch games currently are $60.
And they're going to be more.
They're going to be $70 like they are on everything else. Switch 2 games will go up to $70, and so they are not going to allow these because you would be getting way too good of a deal. And so they will probably introduce some new voucher system when that comes out.
It costs like maybe $120. I mean, I would agree. I got Breath of the Wild 2, whatever that game is called.
Tears of the Kingdom.
That game is $70. I used a voucher on it, so yeah, I felt like I got a great deal on that game.
I did the same thing, and
so I can't blame Nintendo. I felt like I was cheating the system when I did it, so I cannot blame them.
Nintendo says, we still got your money.
Oh, sure. No, I totally understand, but yeah, I'm not surprised that this is a thing.
I don't know that we'll see all Switch 2 games at $70. I think we'll see the marquee first-party Nintendo games. I think
I feel like your
Mario Kart 9,
your Kirby, your Pokemon, those will be.
Well, maybe not all Kirby games. The 3D Kirby games.
Oh yeah, like Star Allies and Forgotten Land.
Something on the scale of Forgotten Land being $70, I think would make sense.
Yeah.
I know that I saw a while back. I mean, it is old news at this point, but I know there was people, speculation that game developers and studios were hoping that GTA 6 would sell at an even higher price point to make that more of a norm, that if that sold at $80 or $90, that could become the norm that other studios would be able to replicate with their games.
Yikes.
I think part of the argument there too was that game is going to be so massive, and with the online, if theoretically that's included as part of the package, that there are people what is it, 10 years later still playing Grand Theft Auto 5 online?
Oh, yeah, it's huge.
And so you can kind of see an argument that, well, you've gotten 10 years out of playing this game. Mm-hmm. You don't really have to put any more money into it. I mean, lots of those people do, right? But you don't have to. So you can kind of see the argument from Rockstar's perspective of, yeah, maybe we should be charging $100 if people are going to play this for 10 years.
If there were any game franchise that could do it, it would be Grand Theft Auto 6. Right?
Yeah.
But it's going to sell probably 100 million copies by the end of its lifespan. So
the flip side to that is they sold a lot of copies of that game to the same people. That's people bought it on the PlayStation 3, the PlayStation 4, the PlayStation 5, the PC. There were people who bought 3 or 4 copies of that game over its lifespan.
Yep.
So, and not at a particular discount, right? They were paying, that game was almost like a Nintendo game. It stayed at full price for quite a long while, it felt like. So if you have Nintendo game vouchers, I would spend them on current Switch games, or one that you think is coming out this year sometime. I would not buy Nintendo game vouchers if you were expecting to use them on Switch 2, because that's not going to work. I do think that will get replaced, because I feel like that's been very successful for them, that voucher program. They also announced that they're ending their gold points. So, when you buy games on Switch, you get what is it? Is it platinum? Is it silver or platinum? You get coins, and then you also get gold coins.
I think you get platinum points and gold points.
Okay, so the platinum ones you can use to buy items from the shop. like merchandise and stuff from Nintendo or for a discount towards it. I know I got a Mario Christmas ornament at some point using those. And then the gold points you could use towards the price of a game.
Yeah.
And they would be a discount for the game. So they're ending that. Maybe that's going to get replaced with some new system. I feel like the gold and platinum was way too complicated, as evidenced by the fact that we don't even know what they're called.
Yeah.
I feel like that was way too complicated. If that could be streamlined in some way, that would be helpful. So maybe that's the goal here. We'll see.
I imagine it's for the same reason. You bought all this money on Switch games. We're not letting you get discounted or cheaper Switch 2 games.
Yeah.
You got to spend all of your dollars on that.
The fact that this news for both of these is breaking around the same time, and this is, we're a little over a month out from the big public unveiling of the Switch 2, probably starts to make a lot of sense.
Yeah.
That is tied directly to that. Let's see. Nate the Hate, who is a fairly good rumor for video games, claims that the Final Fantasy IX and Final Fantasy Tactics remakes are both still in the works. So if you remember, these got leaked as part of that NVIDIA leak, where NVIDIA, like their back end got leaked out and it had a list of games and everybody was like, no, that's ridiculous. None of this is going to happen. They're just making up titles. And then everything has happened off of that list except for these two games, I think, at this point. And so then there's been lots of rumors in the industry that, yes, they are working on some sort of Final Fantasy IX remake. My understanding is it's not at the scale of the Final Fantasy VII remake.
Yeah.
That this would be more of a maybe graphics replacement for the original PlayStation game. Maybe some updating of systems, but not like a full reimagining that we got with Final Fantasy VII.
Yeah, I know that's one that everyone was like, okay, once they do FF7, they need to do FF9. And so like especially now that we're going into the final game of the 7 remake trilogy, there's going to be a lot of clamoring for this coming back up. So I think you're right. I think it'll probably just be more of like a remaster rather than like a rebuild. But it will be cool to see. I hope that they do it because 9 is one of the games that I missed. So I would like the chance to play it.
Yeah, it's generally one of the most beloved of that sort of era of Final Fantasy games. Final Fantasy Tactics the same way, and that has not been available easily on any platform recently.
Not since the PSP, hasn't it?
Yeah, that sounds right. Because they made that semi-sequel, and like there's some confusion, I think, with the titles of those different games and which is a remake and which is a sequel. And
yeah.
I think the Game Boy Advance one was the sequel.
Right. Let's see. Rocksteady, the developer of the Batman Arkham franchise and also the Suicide Squad game, is supposedly back working on a single-player Batman game.
Yay.
I wonder why.
Those are good games. I'm not disappointed by this, but I am maybe a little do we need another Batman Arkham game this soon? We got a trilogy of those. Those were really good games.
Well, we don't know if it's the Arkham one. It may be, you know what I'm saying?
It could be something different.
That's true.
Yeah.
It could be Batman Beyond.
Yeah.
That would be
would be sick.
That'd be a good way to change it up and make it feel fresh. Mm-hmm. I just felt like by that third game, and again, I really like those games a lot.
Yeah, same.
That third game felt a little stale by the end.
Yeah. I went from those games though right into the Telltale games. So it was I guess
the Telltale Batman games.
Yes, the Telltale Batman.
Yeah.
Yes. And so it's like I would like to I'm excited. I hope they do go a different direction than what they did or like pull in more of the lore or whatever. But I'm excited.
It was actually 4 games because they had that
So
Origins.
they had
Oh, yeah.
I always forget that one.
Yeah.
I actually kind of like that game.
Yeah, because that was the one that Troy Baker voiced Joker, right?
That sounds right.
Yeah.
Or did he voice Batman? Because he was supposed to be a younger Batman.
Yeah, I don't remember.
I think Troy Baker did Joker. I think they did have someone else for Batman other than Kevin Conroy.
Okay, that makes sense. We mentioned this a little earlier, but Sonic X Shadow Generations has passed 2 million copies. That means that game has outsold the new Dragon Age game, which is maybe not shocking, but like for a sort of like remaster with some additional content, like that's pretty good sales for that game.
Yeah, I mean, I think it helps that this is like one of the best Sonic games they've put out in a long time. Yeah. And people love Shadow. So I think that like
and it had the movie,
like it really, Sega jumped through all of the hoops really well, I think, with this release, and it's showing in terms of the sales.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know Amelia's still hooked on it, so.
Netflix has picked up the 2 seasons of the Halo series from Paramount Plus. There's no word on a 3rd season, but they were shopping around the show for a 3rd season. One might assume that if this debuts and does really great numbers, that they might be interested in doing a 3rd season. But the bigger news here is everyone finally gets to see John Halo's butt.
I'm excited because I hadn't seen it, so.
You heard it here first, folks. Christina's excited to see John Halo's butt.
I like butts.
She cannot lie. Yeah, look, it's on Netflix. If somebody wants to watch it, watch it. Like, man, that first season was just a drag.
I just remember OJ talking about falling asleep in every episode.
Like, wake me up when the butt comes.
Yeah.
I didn't even realize they made a 2nd season.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It's
I
like
never
the
watched
butt and the
second
dog.
season.
That's all people care about.
I mean, it sounds like my kind of people.
Well, I mean, outside of that, the only thing I saw was that there was like a gaff with there's like a 2023 Chevy Tahoe in one of the scenes or something like that.
Yeah.
I mean, they should have just used a cyber truck because then it would just fit right in.
Honestly,
Right?
Everybody would be like, there's just a warthog in the background. What are you talking about? Oh, man, yesterday, like walking home from work, I saw one driving, and it was like Robin's egg blue.
Yeah, I've
A
seen that one.
Cybertruck?
Yes.
in Carbondale. Wow. Okay.
Because I saw it and I was like, who would spray paint their Cybertruck? Because that's what it looks like. 'Cause it's so like.
Is that the one that has like the Cybertruck written in like red edgy letters?
No, but I've seen that one too. Yeah.
It's like Robin's
Yeah.
egg blue. Like, it's the color of your pen.
Yeah.
Wow.
Which has a cat on it.
Yeah. Because it ate the robin, I guess.
Yeah.
But or almost of her hair. Her hair's a little more greenish.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's faded.
But yeah. Anyways, sorry, that's off topic. But like I saw it and I was like, I almost like took out my phone and took a picture. And I was like, is that what they want? Do they want the attention? I don't want to give them the attention, but I will grill them and ridicule them on this podcast. Like, it just looked stupid. It looked like I told a friend about it, and her reaction was, that makes it look even more like a little kid's drawing.
Yes.
Yeah.
Like, I can't draw a truck. I'm going to draw it blue because that's my favorite color.
Oh man.
Let's see. Take Two, not Tutu.
I was kind of wondering.
I was
like,
trying to figure out what that was.
Look, Tutu makes the best ballerina simulator out there right now. You'd really be into it if you just tried it. Anyway, Take Two fully expects to support the Switch 2. That's probably not shocking. They've been supporting the Switch 1.
Yeah.
However, that sort of enthusiasm makes you think, okay, probably not just NBA 2K, but like maybe something like a Borderlands 4 or even Pie in the Sky, a Grand Theft Auto 6 might come to this. It would be a very stripped down version.
Sure.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking.
But, you know, having a pretty big publisher like that committing, like, hey, we fully expect to be supporting this, right? Like, if you remember, like, Electronic Arts did not, I don't think they put any of the Madden games out on Switch.
I don't think so.
Not that I remember.
Yeah. So, and they were putting the FIFA games, but they were like the last console generation and they were just roster updates each year. So this might be a sign that companies are more fully expecting to like support it, you know. Speaking of the football, Football Manager 25 was delayed for months and then canceled, which is kind of shocking.
Yeah.
Rip.
That's not a huge, you know, I wouldn't think that's a game that has a huge development year to year. Because it's, you know, it's not a game with like arcade style play. It's a spreadsheet sort of game.
Right.
So I don't know what that says about the future of the franchise. It doesn't seem like super good news for that franchise, but that franchise has been going on for quite a while. So
yeah, I think similarly, it's probably got a very devoted. The people that play that game probably really play that game.
Dustin told me at one point he's really into those.
Yeah.
That doesn't surprise me.
So last thing here for the news, Valve has banned all Steam games that require watching ads to play. So your sort of mobile style games that you have to watch an ad after every level or something, like those are banned on Steam now.
Let's
So
go.
there can be, this is apparently had been a policy, but they like set up a separate page for it and made a bigger deal out of it. This seems like them wanting to be very clear. Maybe there had been complaints because they like turned down games. But yeah, I mean, I feel like this is the policy that PlayStation and Switch and Xbox, if they don't, they should also have that sort of shovelware garbage. Keep it off.
Yeah.
Like it's bad enough on iPhone and Android.
Or at the very least, it has to be like very clearly stated at like the forefront. This is what this game is.
Yeah.
This does not ban in-game advertising. It's just when you have to watch an ad in order to progress in the game, right?
Yeah.
So you can still have Madden football with like things on the banners on the sidelines and stuff. So. All right, that does it. So that brings us to our big question. And last episode, Derek had wrote in with a question that was a little too long, so we split it in half. Last time he asked about a game based on America as a whole, but he, for this one, says, since all the panel members currently live in Illinois, what would a game about Illinois be like? If you were in charge of developing a game called Illinois, about Illinois, what kind of game would it be? What would levels or bosses be like if it was that style of a game? So that's from Derek from Kentucky. So basically kind of what we do with the America question, but about Illinois.
Well, I had the same like idea, like with, for whatever reason, Division also came into my head again. But with this one, I think
more cornfields.
For sure, more cornfields. But I also was like, it would be cool if like Pritzker was like our like the person like telling us where to go and stuff, and then all of a sudden he's telling us to go to more shady places, and we're like, what the fuck, Pritzker, what's going on? And it turns out that he's been kidnapped, and someone has been like impersonating him, has co-opted everything, and so the final boss is that, and then we end up saving JD Pritzker.
So it's just Crackdown.
Yeah. That's that Illinois Crackdown.
Oh, man.
And I would play that.
Honestly, I would.
Sounds so good.
I would be like, Pritzker, you've done a lot for me. Let me save you.
Oh, man.
Okay. Alicia, how about you?
Well, I would like to point out one of our podcast members has already made a game about Illinois, about Carbondale specifically.
Oh, yeah.
Justin.
Well, specifically about an eclipse in Carbondale. I guess our level was the most about Carbondale because it was actually out off campus.
Yeah. Yeah, I feel like it would be like a cornfield simulator. I don't know.
This isn't
Farmville?
Nebraska.
Yeah.
There's a lot of farmland in Illinois, though.
For sure, but I don't know.
Maybe we get to go and make crop circles on this one because it's fun.
I think it's
instead
hard
of just corn.
because Illinois is kind of like divided, as we've seen with like parts of Southern Illinois trying to branch off and become parts of Indiana or some stuff. I don't know. There's like you have like the Chicago land area, and then you have everybody else.
Well,
and so it's hard.
I guess here's what I'm gonna say because I just saw Shucked this past weekend, which is absolutely hilarious Broadway musical. Highly recommend, and it's very much about like a community like this one, where if you're from the North, it feels like the South, and if you're from the South, it feels like the North. But what like kickstarts the plot in that is the corn is dying, so one of the characters like leaves the community to go figure out how to save the corn. So maybe something like that. maybe it's just a Shucked game that's called Illinois.
Maybe it's just a Children of the Corn game.
I play it.
All right, Mario.
So I feel like the thing that it would have to be is years and years and years ago at this point, Sufjan Stevens put out the Illinois album. Shouts out to Ryan. I know they really like Sufjan Stevens as well. And they just last year turned that into a Broadway musical. And so you're like getting one step closer to more easily adapting that album to just making it into a game. It'd probably just be like a life simulator type of thing, but it would play heavily off of the Sufjan Stevens Illinois album.
All right. That is a much more esoteric choice than I was expecting. No, there's nothing wrong with
Mario.
it. It's more interesting. All right. So my answer is Saluki X The Eclipse. I already made the game. It touches deep into the heart of what Illinois is like. No, I was trying to think. I think this game has already been made. I think it's called Blues Brothers 2000 for the N64. Because it has iconic imagery, beloved characters, and the Blues Brothers?
Oh,
no.
2000 Blues Brothers? Maybe the first one, but
2000 was great.
It has the characters.
2000.
It has the beloved characters from the first film.
Character.
Some of them. It has Elwood.
You want to say you love John Goodman? That's fine, I guess.
I do love John Goodman.
I would say John Goodman is too good for this world, but you know.
I mean, he's not good in that movie, but
No.
I'm saying the characters, plural, is a bit of a stretch.
Aretha
Character,
Franklin?
fine.
yes, Matt Guitar Murphy. Like, there's some beloved characters in there. But you know, it's
Isn't
also
Blues Traveler in that movie?
yeah. I think they're in
Yeah, they're at the
Erykah
very end.
Badu number, aren't they?
Yeah, then Erykah Badu.
That's not a character.
It's
a real ass human. That's a real ass human.
Erykah Badu is not a character. Like, she oozes character.
Whoa.
Again, a real ass human.
She is a real ass human.
What is it that the thing that you always talk about in wrestling?
Kayfabe.
Whoa.
I'm thinking. It's also my thinking face. It's confusing, I know. But the neo kayfabe. Erykah Badu.
Okay.
I mean, she is playing like a witch in that.
Yes,
film.
yeah.
So,
All right.
unless you're implying that Erykah Badu is a real ass witch,
No, I'm saying that Erykah Badu can be a beloved real ass human. I don't know if the character that she plays is beloved.
She can be a beloved. She can't just be a beloved human. She has to be a beloved real ass human.
Yes.
You're the one that's conflating the two.
I have
You're the one that's not understanding the kayfabe. The Rock and Dwayne Johnson are different people. Erykah Badu and this witch are different people.
I love them both.
Yes, but when the witch sings, it is Erykah Badu singing, and I like her singing.
All right. Blues Brothers is terrible. That's a bad choice.
Blues Brothers.
Blues Brothers 2000 is terrible.
There you go.
Okay, I will agree with that. So you didn't let
Blues Brothers 2000 N64 is also terrible.
I agree with that.
That's why it's the best game about Illinois.
You didn't let me finish. Features iconic characters is a complete mess.
Oh, okay, they're iconic now beloved. We can accept that.
So I feel like that game represents Illinois well, and that there are things that you hold in your mind, like landmarks in Chicago and stuff, where you're like, this is iconic, this is like fantastic, this speaks to America, and then it's also like a complete mess when you actually delve very deeply into it. So Blues Brothers 2000 is the embodiment of Illinois. So if I was going to make a game, I would make...
It didn't say a good
Final Fantasy VII remake level remake of Blues Brothers 2000.
Well, here's the thing, though. I think I could make Blues Brothers 2000. I think I would wager that Saluki X The Eclipse is a better game than Blues Brothers 2000.
I would agree.
And so from that perspective, I would say, if I had to make a game about Illinois, that would probably be fairly accurate. And if I made a game about Illinois, it would definitely include the Blues Brothers.
I think that's totally fair.
But there'd be a lot more, punching of Nazis.
I was going to say, I'm surprised you went Blues Brothers 2000 and not just Blues Brothers on the SNES. That game might not be any better, but...
No, it's not. They're both terrible. There's never been really a good Blues Brothers game, sadly. And, none of them actually use the music because they're cheap cash-ins. But yes, any game where you get to punch Nazis, Illinois Nazis...
World War II Nazis.
Yeah, billionaires, Cybertruck driving Nazis. I'm all for it.
Yeah.
And that's probably the best representation of Illinois we could have.
The only gameplay loop, but it's a good one.
Look, if you gave me a game where I got to go around just punching Nazis.
Just drive to different parts of Illinois punching Nazis.
That's it. That's the entire game. 10 out of 10.
As I drive there, I get to run Cybertrucks off the road.
Some of them will be painted robin's egg blue.
You are already excited for this game. It's the game we need right now, emotionally, as a state, as a nation.
It's the game we need, but not the game we deserve.
All right, that does it for this week's episode. It is a blizzard coming soon outside, so we're going to head out of here. But thank you, Mario, Alicia, and Christina. Thank you for those of you who are listening. You can check out more of our content by going to salukigames.com. And we will be back soon with another episode. Play something fun in the meantime.